There's a lot of members. I want to thank my conference. A lot of
Kevin
people worked
McCarthy
really
speaking to
hard
reporters. Let's
to put
listen.
this together. I mean, Garrett Graves, Patrick McHenry, Westerman, French Hill, Chip Roy, and Scott Perry. And they really worked together at that end to put it all through, and just all the different members and hanging with me through all those different votes. But I do want to especially thank President Trump. I don't think anybody should doubt his influence. He was with me from the beginning. Somebody wrote the doubt of whether he was there, and he was all in. He would call me and he would call others. And he really was, I was just talking to him tonight, helping get those final votes. And what he's really saying, really for the party and the country, that we have to come together. We have to focus on the economy. We've got to focus, make our borders secure. We've got to do so much work to do, and he was a great influence to make that all happen. So thank you, President Trump.
Mr. Speaker, about what he did specifically? Did he make
Walk through what happened on the floor here. Heading into the 14th ballot, you thought you had the votes. Suddenly you were surprised. There was a heated confrontation on the floor. You had an exchange with Matt Gaetz. What happened?
It wasn't a heated one between Matt and I, no. What I was telling him is I'd rather win on the 15th. So we went to another ballot. That was a joke, but you didn't catch it. No, what happened was it became a tie. And I really think Matt had talked to me before. Matt really wanted to get everybody there. And so look, through all of this, people's emotions go up and down. And at the end of the night, Matt got everybody there from the point that nobody voted against the other way. So it actually helped unite people.
But what changed from them going from voting against you to voting present on the next vote? Was it President Trump specifically?
Well, President Trump talked to a lot, but I also think it's them and wanting to make this conference united and work together. So I thanked him for that. And Matt worked hard on that as well.
How do you prevent a situation like this from happening on every tight, contested vote going forward over the next 2 years of your speakership?
I think what you will see by having this now, we've worked out how to work together. You know, it's a little more difficult when you go into a majority and maybe the margins aren't high. I mean, if you study American history, this was the closest margin than any first person to win a speaker in the last 70 years. But if you look at the end of the day of how many people voted against me, it was the smallest margin that any modern speaker has had. So it may have taken a little longer, and I always like to quote my father. You know, he died 23 years ago, but he would tell, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So don't judge us on how we start, watch how we finish. And I think by having the disruption now, really built the trust with one another and learned how to work together. What we're going to have to find in our mindset is that we have to front load, that we have to think about and work on the bills with a microcosm of the conference before we even start writing it. And that's really what we learned here. And working the rules, there were a lot of great ideas. At the end of the day, I remember on the January 1st, we did this conference call with the entire conference. And when we walked through all the rules, people were excited. People were mad before, like, what were you working on? Why was it holding all up? But at the end of the day, the product was better. So maybe 100 years from now, some master student will have to write about this. But really what most people will write about or feel is the outcome of how well we'll run the floor for the next 2 years. All right, last question.
Mr. Speaker, change to the motion to vacate. How confident are you that you will have this job for a full 2-year term?
1,000%. Thank you all.
Well, we just heard from Kevin McCarthy, now Speaker McCarthy. Interestingly enough, paying homage to a former president, President Trump, crediting him with the success. Also, somebody who's been an arch nemesis, of course, Representative Matt Gaetz, also getting a great deal of credit today and this evening or this morning. What time is it? All today, because now Speaker McCarthy wants to essentially, I guess we're getting insight into who he thinks is responsible for that last-minute win, the 15th round.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but I just want to take a moment to address what you just said about thanking Donald Trump. We saw, I mean, a Bloomberg photographer, I believe it was, captured this fantastic, remarkable photo of Marjorie Taylor Greene holding out her phone, and it said DT on it. We know that the former president was making calls. But I just still can't wrap my mind around the fact that we are 2 years to there's the picture right there. We're 2 years to the day, to the night of January 6th, where that same man who was president at the time stoked a mob who came in and completely almost demolished that very chamber and had people hunting his vice president, the then Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and now Kevin McCarthy is Speaker, and he is thanking Donald Trump. And he's Speaker in part because of the contortions that he put himself in to stay aligned with Donald Trump.
And the contortions that he put himself in helped save Donald Trump at a moment where the party
Exactly.
was very, very seriously considering a very real break. And I think people need to understand that. Like, it's very tough to remember because honestly, at this point, half the country doesn't believe January 6th was an actual thing. But as somebody who was in the Capitol the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and on, there was probably a 3-day period, maybe a 2.5-day period where every member you spoke to on the Republican side, including those who were pretty dedicated to the former president, were right on the edge because they were all there and they knew it. And then now Speaker Kevin McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago. They took the picture together and things started to turn around. If Speaker McCarthy's goal was to be Speaker and he knew he needed the former president at his side, well, he's Speaker and the former president was at his side. The one thing I think that I was struck by is and Liam and I were looking at each other at the same time, so I'm going to steal the smart thing that he was going to say, probably in a less smart manner. He's got the job now. And I also don't think that the former president was critical in like actually getting him there. I'm sure he had an effect. But most of this week was defined by the fact that he had no juice.
That's exactly
at
right.
all, or very limited juice.
He's rehabilitating him
Why,
again.
why do you have to go out and immediately do the thing where like you pander to him because you know he's watching and it matters? I think that's
But it's the symbiosis that you mentioned, that they made bets on each other a long time ago. Yeah. And I think it's the most interesting thing to me is that Trump stuck with him in this is a transactional man who didn't ask anything for him, but there's an appreciation at some level that they are reliant on each other. They benefit from one another's success and can't afford one another's failure. And so I think that acknowledgement at the end is sort of this is the payoff. There wasn't an endorsement that got Donald Trump's help, but at the end here, they're still, holding hands together.